one. Okay. Once again, we are in the Portland Media Center for another episode of Between the Piers. As always, I'm your host, Piers Kemkis, and it has been a turbulent few weeks here in Portland. We've gotten a couple of rogue thunderstorms coming through, enough to freak the dog out and have him sit on my head, which was great. But now we're in some sunshine, which is really nice. But it certainly has been a weird start to the tourist season, but we are just getting ramped up. Speaking of just getting ramped up, my next guest's season is getting ramped up pretty significantly as far as I know. My next guest is Sarah Holman, the owner of the successful guiding service Hikes Mountains LLC. Sarah is a registered Maine guide. That's right, I got a registered Maine guide on the podcast, just like I said I would. And in today's episode, I hope to demystify what a registered Maine guide actually is. There are several legendary Maine guides in my opinion. Flyrod, Susie Hockmeyer, Leroy Dudley, and the one sitting at my table. See, Sarah did the absolute impossible, which was inspiring me to go for my guiding license, which is something I had dragged my heels about for forever. So thank you for that, Sarah. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the podcast. This is super, super cool. You have just been going, haven't you?
I have, yes. I have been doing a lot of guiding since I got my license.
Yeah.
Which was 4 years ago.
4 years ago. Nice. Mm-hmm. What was your most recent trip we were just talking about?
I just got back from 6 days on the Appalachian Trail in western Massachusetts, so the Berkshire region, yes.
Did you go up Greylock?
I did go up. Well, I actually went down Greylock because the day we did Greylock, it was really hot and really humid. So we opted to start at the top and hike to the bottom.
How does that work? Is there a road?
There's a road, yeah. There's a road and a parking lot. So
I see. So
yeah.
It's kind of like Bear Mountain in New York?
I've never been to Bear Mountain, but there are a few that it's like Mount Washington.
I was going to say like Mount Washington
Yes.
in New Hampshire?
Yes.
But not like Mount Moosalok.
No.
Have you ever guided up Moosalok?
I haven't guided it. I've done it myself. It's actually, I'm guiding it in July, so that's
so
coming up.
Jealous.
I love that
That's
mountain.
super cool. Isn't it a nice one?
Yeah, it's a great summit.
I could talk about Moosalok for forever. I could go on about that for really long. Do you know there was a hotel up there at one point?
I did know that. Yes. Most of those are gone. I feel like there were a few in the Whites that burned down. But yeah, that used to be a thing.
Yeah. I think it had to do with Dartmouth?
Mm-hmm.
University?
Dartmouth, their outing club still runs the lodge at the base of the mountain and does a lot of trail work over there. So they're still very much affiliated, but no more hotel at the top.
Yeah, no. So if you're expecting a 5-star hotel at the top of Moosalok, you will be sorely disappointed.
True.
Having said that, the trail up Moosalok is really nice. On
It
the
is.
side.
Yes, it's a great trail.
And then there's Beaverbrook.
I think I went up Beaverbrook too. I don't know. My 67 4,000 footers are a bit of a blur.
Yeah,
but
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Anyways, Moosalok aside, say you had to explain to a person who has never been to Maine what a registered Maine guide is. How would you go about explaining it?
How would I explain that? Well, first I would say Maine is one of not many states where in order to take people into the wilderness and charge for it, you need to be licensed with the state. Yep. So that's really unique. I know New York has that law, and I believe there are maybe some states out west. But Maine and New York are really the only two that I'm super familiar with who have this licensing. So to me, what it means is that Maine has really rigorous standards for guiding, which I think is really important, especially because our terrain is challenging and remote. And a lot of people, I have, of course, in my Facebook feed, a lot of reports from the White Mountains, and just every day it's someone has gotten hurt or lost or underestimated the difficulty of the terrain. And of course, that happens in Maine as well. But I think it's important that we have the standards that we have. So first I explained that. And then for me, having my license was about being able to, it started as being able to guide women and having the knowledge and the confidence to, take people into the woods and bring them out safely.
And I think that's incredibly important. I think with the Whites, obviously the Whites have some pretty significant hazards, but there's also a lot more infrastructure.
True.
In the Whites.
True.
Compared to Maine.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Maine's very, very isolated.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another hazard. of that, and that's why I think Maine has much more rigorous standards than New Hampshire. Is there no New Hampshire?
You can get a license to guide in New Hampshire, but it's not required to guide in New Hampshire, is my understanding.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, because every time I've looked up like registered New Hampshire guide, absolutely nothing pops up.
Yeah, it's a different system.
Yeah, entirely. And then it was absolutely impossible to find their trapping laws when I had to do a report on that. So that was on terms of like their trapping regulations. But anyways, what is the history behind Registered Maine guiding?
Well, the first Registered Maine guide was Fly Rod Crosby, a female, which is very cool. And she was the first person to be registered by the state. It was obviously a very different set of practices back then. My understanding is it used to be that you had a game warden sort of, interview you and talk to you about your experience, and then they decided if you got a license or not. So it's changed quite a bit since then.
Kind of. It still kind of is just people interviewing you. And
That's true. But I think it was a lot more based on, so many things in rural Maine are, who in the sense of like you've made a reputation for yourself as like the woman or the man who's really good at finding where the fish are, finding where the moose are. So much more of I don't know how to describe it. Just like you weren't sitting down to take a written test. It was more like, what is your experience? What is your background? What are your qualifications?
Yeah, and Fly Rod, the legend goes, as I understand it, is that she could cover the entire banks of the river she was fishing on with fish. Like she was so good at fly fishing.
Right.
Of course, that's that could be as tall a tale as Paul Bunyan.
True.
But when you go into DIFW's like headquarters, there's a statue of her.
Yep, there she is.
And she mattered so much.
She did.
Absolutely. And then she's not the only one. There's also Leroy Dudley, the Dudley Trail in Katahdin.
Right.
He was a Registered Maine guide as well.
I think he was. I don't know as much about his history.
Yeah. He had a lot of tall tales.
Yes, that's true.
And Pomola, particularly, the guardian deity of Katahdin.
Yes.
And yeah, Dudley was quite a yarn spinner, if you will. Yes,
there's a lot of that history you can still find in Baxter in books, and the Rangers will tell you the stories, and it's a lot of good folklore.
Yeah. Do you guide a lot in Baxter?
I do guide a fair amount in Baxter. I mean, it's a drive. I live in Portland, so guiding in Baxter is a time commitment for me. But that said, I usually guide Katahdin probably about 6 times in a season. So yeah, I'm familiar with the terrain and all of the rules and regulations of Katahdin. Yeah,
Katahdin is intense.
It is intense,
and I don't think people really give Katahdin the credit that it deserves.
No, I think it's often underestimated. It's either people underestimate Katahdin or they overestimate their ability.
Yep.
And I think the underestimation is partly about the terrain, but also partly a lack of understanding around just how backcountry Baxter State Park really is, and that the resources they have there for rescue are really reserved for life-threatening emergencies. Yeah. So, spraining your ankle in the woods does not qualify as a something they're going to send in a litter for. And I think people just, even like you were saying in New Hampshire in the White Mountains, there are so many trails in the Whites that are so accessible. Yes. And, you just drive up to the trailhead and you hike in 2 miles and there's a beautiful waterfall and you turn around and come out. Yeah. Obviously, there's much more extreme than that as well. But Baxter, sort of everything about Baxter from the moment you go through that gate is remote. And just there's no cell service anywhere except maybe the top of Katahdin if it's not cloudy. And so I think sometimes people just underestimate the entire experience of going into Baxter and what that really means and what responsibility you as a hiker have for your own safety.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's interesting, too, because, any way you swing it with Baxter, it's going to be, particularly Katahdin, it's going to be a 10-mile day.
Yes.
Versus Washington. If you take Ammonoosuc, what is it, like 6?
Yeah, if you're cruising.
Yeah.
I usually tell people any trail is going to be at least 12 hours
Yeah.
and potentially like 14 to 16.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other thing people don't, it's all, people focus so much on getting to the summit and forget that that's a huge accomplishment, but really the biggest accomplishment is getting back to the trailhead. And however long it takes you to get up, it will take you that long to get down, if not longer, because now you're exhausted.
That's true.
So
I know that's like that cursed hiker math that people use.
Right.
It's like it's a 6 mile day, but it's only 2.5 to the summit. Then there's that spur trail, so technically it's only a 2.5 mile day.
Right.
People really underestimate that.
yes, they do. They do. Yeah.
And then Katahdin, it's the approach.
Mm-hmm.
The approach for Katahdin is, a majority of the battle when it comes to Katahdin. With Washington, it's like you can drive up Washington.
Right, exactly.
And then going back to Moosilauke, I mean, the approach up Moosilauke is nothing.
Right.
But Moosilauke is still a 4,800 foot peak.
Right. Yeah.
But Katahdin, it's like...
Yeah, it's a real commitment.
It's a real commitment. And if you can't do that, you probably should reconsider.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I find it really funny when people are like, have you hiked the most dangerous trail in Maine? And it's Beehive in Acadia.
Oh, yes, right.
Which, to its credit, does have its hazards, but have you done the Knife's Edge?
Right. I think it's, the volume of people going up the Beehive probably makes that statistic what it is versus the number of people going across Knife's Edge.
That's very fair. Yeah. That's, it's a really good point as well.
Yeah.
So Maine guiding started with hunting and fishing.
Mm-hmm.
But then it gradually expanded to incorporate a lot more disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
What are the other disciplines?
Well, for the rec, so there's the rec test, which is, as you know, encompasses many things. Canoeing, snowmobiling, ATVing, hiking, of course, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, pretty much anything you could do to recreate outside that doesn't involve hunting and fishing falls under the recreation license. And then we have sea kayaking and we have whitewater rafting, which are, have a lot within them as well. But I think the rec license is the most kind of diverse skills. Or I guess what I should say is that you have to learn the most things, different things, for the test. So it's, it's a lot. And I knew going into it that I would never be doing anything but hiking, and, camping and maybe some canoeing. But you still have to learn all the snowmobiling laws and the ATV laws.
Yeah, and then you also have to learn, I think during my exam, he threw me a picture of a reflector oven. He's like, what's this? And I'm like, well, that's a reflector oven. I know what that is. I really want one. He's like, what's your biscuit recipe? And I'm like, what?
Oh my gosh, yes, the classic biscuit recipe.
And you cannot say Bisquick was one of the most important parts of the whole thing.
Yes.
So that was very interesting. And we'll get back to the testing process a little later. What disciplines do you currently hold?
I have my rec license and my sea kayak license.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
Is the sea kayak the one with the blue patch?
Yes.
It is.
It is blue.
Is
Mm-hmm.
and then whitewater rafting also?
I'm not sure. That one might be blue also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I know rec is either red or green.
Yeah. Or there's like a brownish option.
We have a brown option?
There's a brown option.
I didn't get offered a brown option.
Or kind of like tan colored.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's still very neat.
They may actually be sort of interchangeable. I'm not sure. When I got my sea kayak license, I had to ask I was like, well, wait, where's my blue patch? And she was like, well, you already have a patch. And I was like, yeah, but not the blue one.
I want the blue one.
I want the blue one. So I had to buy it. I had to buy my blue patch.
I know. I had to buy. I got my big red patch.
Yep.
Then I bought a small red patch.
Yep.
And then I got the pin.
Yeah. Yeah, all the swag.
All the swag. When you become a registered Maine guide, you want people to know. I feel like a lot of people think of us as a bunch of wool jacket wearing, pack basket carrying, forest people with big old bean boots up to our knees. And while that might be true of me, what has been your experience?
Well, I do have all those things.
Yeah, okay, sweet. So we're on the same page.
Yes, I love the kind of the history of the Maine guide, and LL Bean, of course, is a huge part of that. So I do have all those nostalgic items. But, the guides that I sort of work with the most are also rec guides because often what happens is another thing people underestimate about Katahdin is how few guides there are who will guide Katahdin.
Oh, wow.
And how far in advance you need to book us. So I have, I think, 5 or 6 trips planned this summer up Katahdin, and those have been booked since midwinter. And now when people email me, I'm either saying, yeah, I have these 2 days and that's it, or I'm saying, I can't do it, but here are 3 other guides who can do it, or maybe can do it, who you could contact.
So guiding's collaborative in that way.
I feel like it has been for me, really with 2 guides specifically who are both based out of Millinocket. And we all kind of refer people to each other when our availability is really pressed.
Sure.
Or if we think something is just a better fit. So I work a lot with Tori Gray at the Wilderness Guru and Cody Sapp, who runs the AT Hostel in Millinocket with his wife, Dania. He's also a registered Maine guide, and they do trips. And they have sort of a whole team. So like Tori and I are independent, single proprietor, but Cody has a team of guides. So if I have someone who, like, say, wants to do the 100-mile wilderness and I don't have that many days in my schedule, that's someone that I would refer to, and vice versa. We kind of lean on each other as the summer gets really busy.
Sure. And your summers have been
They have been very busy, really, since I started.
That's awesome.
Yeah. They're really, like I said, there are not a lot of us who guide Katahdin regularly. It's hard. It's also pretty high stakes. I mean, in terms of liability and risk. So I think it's something that a lot of guides just are not up for.
Sure. No, absolutely. The commitment to Katahdin is significantly higher than most of the I'd say all the other mountains in Maine.
Yeah.
I can't think of a mountain in Maine. Maybe you could make the case for Washington, but I'd say Katahdin is like the beast of the Northeast.
I agree.
Yeah. So are a majority of your hikes and a majority of your guided trips Katahdin, or do you do other stuff?
I do guide in the Whites, but in Maine, it's mostly Katahdin. I do some short backpacking, like intro to backpacking trips. And when I do those, I generally go to the Grafton Loop Trail in Grafton Notch. And that's partly, honestly, because Baxter comes with a lot of extra planning, right? Yeah. So you have to have reservations even for, backcountry sites. And so there's not as much flexibility around like weather, and certainly last minute is not a thing in Baxter unless you just kind of luck out on the reservations. But there are a lot more. Oh, and also, again, like I said, I'm in Portland, so it's easier for me to get to Western Maine or the White sometimes than it is to get to Katahdin.
All the way up I-95.
Yes, it's a long journey.
Do you do anything in the southeastern Maine area? Anything more local?
I will do little. Sometimes people contact me and they want to do they're having a family reunion or a get together and they just want to do a little something, and I'll do like Mount Agamenticus, which is down in York. That's a great mountain, has a beautiful view of the coast and of the Whites. And sometimes I'll even do guided trips in like Wolf's Neck or Bradbury or Pleasant Mountain, mostly with people from out of state who partly just want someone there to manage everything and to tell them about Maine. So I'll do, on those shorter ones, I'll talk about like maritime history and, the history of the lumber business, and point out different tree species and things like that. So those are more kind of tourist focused. But Pleasant Mountain is a great hike too. I've done that. I've used that as like an intro to winter hiking mountain because it's only 2,000 feet. So, but it has a beautiful view of the Whites from the top, and it's certainly steep, and steep enough to learn to use microspikes or snowshoes. So, I think within an hour we do have some options, but they're not like big mountain hike options.
Sure. Yeah, you're not going for a big day.
Exactly.
Just because they don't exist here.
They don't exist, right.
But I know that there's also plenty of sea kayaking options here as well. Right?
Oh, yeah. Tons of sea kayaking options. I work for LLB, and they have a paddling center down on Lower Flying Point. So they do a lot of sea kayaking trips based right there. And they do longer trips as well, multi-day, paddle to an island, spend the night kind of trips. And then Portland Paddle right here in Portland. I did a little bit of work for them before I got my license. And they have great trips too. You can go check out Fort Gorgeous. You can, paddle around around the bay, and then they have some longer trips. So I am not a confident enough sea kayaker that I would do something like that on my own. My energy is really in hiking, and sea kayaking is, like you said, it's local. So it's nice to have something that I can do locally, and working with a team is great too, versus with my hiking, often I'm on my own.
Sure. Yeah. And I feel like hiking is interesting in the Registered Maine Guide world, because hiking is something that camp counselors can do without a Registered Maine Guide license.
Yes.
So it's like, how do you establish yourself as legitimate when people can be like, oh, well, camp counselors can do that. Why do you need a certification? What are your thoughts?
Well, I do think camp counselors need something.
I think they do trip leader.
It's trip leader. That's what it's called,
Yeah.
trip leader training. And I don't know. I think for me, I have no interest in guiding at the kid level. I think that just adds another layer of logistics and responsibility. And I think camps generally, in a camp situation, you've got a bunch of kids, and hopefully you're not just sending one counselor, right? Hopefully you have a lot of support. And so I think camps can, manage their own risk and make those decisions. I'm more interested in what individual adults are doing in terms of staying safe and making choices around their own limitations and how they can be successful and safe by hiring a guide.
Yep. And I think that it's a lot easier to guide adults than it is to guide kids.
In some ways, yeah.
Because adults are paying money to be there. Sometimes the kid is being forced to go on the mountain.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. Yeah.
So that's a huge part of it as well. But what Maine Guide stereotypes do you think are true, and what are tall tales? I feel like you're going to love this.
Oh my gosh. Stereotypes. I mean, I do think it's a pretty, what's the word? It's a hard thing to get information about.
Isn't that the truth?
It's kind of a locked down segment of people.
So, yeah.
It's kind of there's this piece of it that's so old-fashioned in a way. And you can't go online. Well, you can. If you go online and Google, Registered Maine Guide study tools, they don't exist. Nope. Maybe somebody made a Quizlet somewhere that you can find.
I have some hidden Quizlets.
That may or may not have the correct information. You don't know. And so there's no here's the study book for becoming a Maine guide. So it is kind of a guarded group of people, I guess. But in some ways, I think that's good. I think we shouldn't be handing these licenses out easily because it is, again, a huge amount of responsibility taking someone into the woods or up a mountain or out onto a body of water. So I think it's important to maintain a high level of professionalism and a high level of guarding those qualifications and really making sure that people are ready to do the work.
Yeah. Speaking of old-fashioned, I once had a boss that said that the Registered Maine Guide exam was outdated. And he was like, most wilderness guides need a wilderness first responder, da-da-da-da-da. And in the Maine Guide exam, they're asking you, well, if smoke hangs low under campfire, what does that mean? And I'm like, okay, sir, your opinion has made me upset. I work for you, so
I'll keep that to myself.
Keep that to myself.
Yeah. I mean, I think they definitely have addressed some of that. There is now a GPS portion of the test, which didn't exist. When I first took my rec license test, which was in October of 22, I did not have to do the GPS portion. That did not exist yet. When I took my sea kayaking license a year or two ago, I did. So that's a relatively new development. My understanding is they've moved some of their identification online, the pictures of the animals and the plants and whatnot. So, I mean, I think there's been some adjustment, but again, I think all of the modern things that we have when we go out into the woods are great and they make our lives easier. But at the end of the day, they're tools. They're not things you should rely on. Mm-hmm. And in the times that I've been in true emergency situations, those things didn't help me.
Yeah.
And what I had to rely on were skills, not when the fog hangs low, but skills like shelter building and keeping people warm, things that, my phone didn't have the answers for me, and my GPS, frankly, it would have taken too much time to try to hunt and peck a message on my Garmin than to just respond to what was happening in the moment. Exactly. So I hope they continue to ask questions that have nothing to do with technology and really lean on that more so than, well, how would you use your GPS to get out of this situation?
Right, exactly, because GPSs have batteries and batteries can fail.
Exactly.
And connection is not, connection's not guaranteed.
No, connection is, they do. And it's a phenomenal tool that I'm grateful to have. But I have also been in the 100-mile wilderness under cloudy skies and have had my Garmin take a full 24 hours to send a message. Yep. So, it's not foolproof. And I think that's part of this guardedness, right? If that's a word, of the license is it's not meant to be a test you can study for. It's meant to be a test that, and you do have to study, as you know, very hard.
Yeah.
That being said, it's meant to test your knowledge and experience and how you would apply it in a real situation, not like, well, this is what the book told me to do, because the book can tell you something very complex, and I guarantee it's never going to show up exactly like that in practice.
And then there's also things like thinking outside the box,
right?
And utilizing things that you have that maybe don't make sense in the scenario,
right?
Like I remember one of the scenarios was like somebody's injured on the side of a cliff,
mm-hmm.
right? And what the examiners were looking for is taking off your belt, putting it around their belt loop, and tying them to a tree. Like
right.
These are the thinking outside the box
right.
things that would never pop up on any study guide.
Right, exactly.
And it's really about if you have the know-it-all to think outside the box to keep people safe.
Right. And to use what you have at your disposal, like a belt.
Yeah. You see, that's interesting, right? Because it is a guide. The guide license is something you cannot study for, and yet
you do have to study.
And yet there are classes for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Maine Outdoor Learning Center is an incredible example of that.
Yes.
Captain John runs an incredible ship. But I do know that some of the examiners, if you tell them that you took the class, they're mm-hmm. going to absolutely hammer you.
They do. And I believe the reason for that is they don't want you to just take a class. They want you to have experience, real world experience. And then, because I also took the class, I did the Maine Outdoor Learning Center has a week-long all women class that they do off-grid at their location. I think it's in Lee. And it was fantastic. And for me, but at that point, I had already been hiking for, 2 years. And so I had a lot of real world experience, but I knew nothing about snowmobiling, ATVing, and canoeing. And I knew that I had to have those skills, even though I was never going to use them with my license, or I couldn't imagine using them. I knew I still had to pass the test. And so I think if you go into the testing room and you have clearly experience in the field and you have a clear sense of what you want to do with your license, and then say, I also took this class to prepare, I think there's some understanding around that.
There can be, and then there's
not always.
Yeah, not always, as I experienced in my first.
I know.
My first
Your first go around.
My first go around was brutal.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I'm thinking of my first.
I know, it was rough.
That was absolutely brutal. Wouldn't you know that the St. John and the Allagash flow northward?
Yes.
But the exam is one of the hardest in the nation.
Yes.
It is by far one of the hardest in the nation. I think that's why it's so intimidating for a lot of people.
Right. I agree.
And it's for those reasons. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because you have to spend, what is it, $150 just to go into the room?
I think so, yeah.
The room.
The
testing room. That is just, it's so funny how much of like they take you down this elevator and go down.
I know.
Anyways, I won't spoil too much because if DIFW hears this, my goose is cooked. But would you say that the Registered Maine guide community is tight knit, or is it more of like a everyone for themselves community?
I think it's tight knit in small groups.
Sure.
So again, there are not a lot. There is a professional organization, the Maine Guides Association, I believe it's called, but it seems to be more northern Maine based. I have not. I've joined it, but I haven't actually participated in any of the activities. Partly because it's far. It's always a far drive.
Sure.
So there is kind of this professional group. But like I was saying about Katahdin, I really find that my network are other people doing the same thing as me. And I lean on those people to help manage clients and availability. I also get in touch with those people periodically and say, hey, how much are you charging? So that I'm not undercutting or overpricing my offering. And so there's some of that conversation that happens. But again, it's smaller groups. And I think that probably happens in the sea kayaking community and the whitewater community and hunting and fishing. I have found one group that I've recently joined is Maine Outdoor Brands, which is based here in Portland. And they are, I'm not sure how many guides they have in the group. I'm sure a few. But they really connect people in all sectors of the outdoor economy in the state of Maine. They do networking events, educational events. They have a big conference every year. And for me, that's been a really great way to meet other people working outdoors and make connections.
Sure. So in that being said, where do you think Maine guides, these traditional wool coat wearing pack-back dwellers, fit in the greater Maine outdoor economic ecosystem?
I mean, I think we're always going to have a place in the ecosystem because I don't see Maine ever changing the law about guiding. And so Maine, tourism is our big industry, and we're finding more and more people are wanting to not only come here to eat lobster, but to have, not necessarily wilderness, but outdoor experiences, managed outdoor experiences.
Yes. Yeah.
That's becoming a trend, is not necessarily these really, really hard things, but things that have that feel immersive, and you're getting a great view or you're seeing something beautiful. And so I do think there will always be a place for Maine guides. And and I think it varies depending on where in the state you are. Northern Maine is a lot different than Southern Maine. And I think people going up there to hunt, for moose and bear and deer, there's always going to be a need for folks who understand even like how to get around up there. There aren't any roads.
Know those woods.
Right.
Yeah.
The woods and the logging roads and the waterways. I hope that there's always kind of this legendary group of people who have made this their life.
Absolutely. And you have. And
I have.
That's why we're talking about, and that's a good segue into She Hikes Mountains.
Yes.
Which is your incredible business.
Oh, thanks.
Absolutely. So where did the idea for She Hikes Mountains come from?
So I started hiking during COVID. I was not a hiker before that.
Okay.
I grew up, I'm from a more rural part of Maine than Portland. I grew up outside of Augusta in a very small town called Reedfield.
Yes, Reedfield.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. So my parents would take me camping. That was like our summer vacation. We would go to the White Mountains and camp on the Swift River. And they hiked, but I had no interest. I would stay at the campground and read my book and play in the river.
What book was it?
Oh, anything. Usually, excuse me, probably Laura Ingalls Wilder
Nice.
for a long stretch of time there. Yeah, I was really I was born 100 years too late. So anyway, I was not a big hiker until COVID, and then I just really needed something to get me out of the house and give me a little space from everything that was going on. I had a husband who was working in the house and a daughter who was going to school in the house and a dog who was in the house, and I just didn't have a lot of I'm also a writer, and so that was kind of my routine was everybody would leave to go to work and school, and I would have my space for writing and creative thinking, and then that just it felt really impossible as there were more people in the house, and then also just, the stress of COVID and not really understanding what was going on and what was going to happen and managing all of that. So it was summer of 2020. I think it was August. And I just kind of announced one day to my family that I was going hiking in New Hampshire. And they were kind of like, well, wait, you don't hike. What do you mean? And I was like, well, now I do. And I do now. And I went out to New Hampshire. I hiked. I think the first hike I did was the Mountain, South Moat, which is it's a tough hike, but it's not crazy and not a 4,000 footer.
It's still pretty.
It's steep at the top. It's pretty scrambly. And I just remember, I thought I was going to die. and I've always been an active person, I've been a runner. I walk a lot and, on the Portland Trail system, but I thought I was going to die. It was so hard, but it was also so incredible. And so I did that hike and I actually camped that night on my own at one of the state parks in New Hampshire and was like, I want to do this every week.
That's such a courageous jump too. Like hiking
it was
by yourself in New Hampshire,
right?
Just on a whim.
Right.
Everybody thinks that like a dinosaur is going to come out of the trees.
Yes,
like,
a bear. Always a bear.
Or Bigfoot or, well, I don't know any of New Hampshire's folklore, unfortunately.
I'm sure there's something.
I'm sure there's some mystical three-headed
mountain creature.
I don't know. I don't got it. But so you just went for it.
I just went for it. And then after that hike, I was like, all right, well, what am I going to do next? And I had All Trails, not the pay for All Trails version, just was like, oh, I found this resource and I found, and I can't remember what the elevation is of North or South Moat off the top of my head, but I think it's over
34.
Yeah. So I'm on All Trails and I'm Googling and I find a mountain where I believe that the elevation is 4,000 feet. And I'm like, great, that's not that much higher than what I just did. I'm going to go for it. So I go out the next week and at the trailhead, it's, 75 degrees. And I head up Mount Adams.
Oh, no.
Which is like one of the tallest mountains in New Hampshire. It's the second tallest. And what I had been reading on All Trails was not the total elevation, but the elevation gain.
Oh, good.
So I get to the top of Mount Adams in my, my little windbreaker. It's 45 degrees up there and totally socked in.
Yep.
I was lucky that nothing went wrong because I was not prepared to be up there. And, but I made it and I made it back down. And it was the first time, I had never been above tree line. And so I got up there and was like, this is like being on the moon. I was just so mesmerized by the experience of being up there and what it looked like and how beautiful it was and how peaceful it was. And so I got back down and got to my car and immediately, started looking up what I was going to do next and then that's how I stumbled upon the 4,000 footers list. I didn't even know what that was until I had hiked Mount Adams. And so I realized there are 67 4,000 footers in New England, most in New Hampshire, as you know, and then 14 in Maine and 5 in Vermont. And I decided I was going to do all of them in a year.
Whoa.
And I think I just needed a goal, and I was so into it, and it gave me a reason. It gave me a list. I'm very like a list. I'm a list person and a goal person, and I don't call it peak bagging. I don't like that. What? To me, that implies that you're taking something, you're bagging something. Okay. I like peak tagging.
Peak tag? Okay. Yeah,
yes.
That's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a little whatever. Peak baggers, they can keep their terminology, but for me, it was like, well, I'm not putting anything in my bag. I'm just up here to take it all in. So, Anyway, yeah, I decided I would do it in a year. It gave me a goal. I also, again, I was looking for a creative outlet. That was part of why I started hiking. And so I decided to write a blog about all of these trails that I was doing. And that's where She Hikes Mountains came from. That's the name of my website and the name of my Instagram handle. And so I just had this, built a website, started blogging and keeping track of all of my hiking. And Katahdin was the last hike that I did.
Of the 67?
Of the 67. I had never been to Baxter State Park, even though I grew up in Maine. Yeah. So I decided Katahdin was going to be my end. I thought that would be very appropriate. And I also, about 6 months into this project, I also decided I wanted to hike the 100-mile wilderness, backpack it by myself, leading into Baxter and up Katahdin. So this was going to be like a 8-day event. I was going to start in Monson, backpack all the way through to Katahdin and finish my 4,000 footers.
Wow. I just finished on Camel's Hump. Like that's
Camel's Hump is great. Yeah. Yeah. So, and I had never backpacked before. And so I had a friend who had hiked the AT who we actually did the Grafton Loop. That was my first backpacking trip in the middle of doing all of this other hiking. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I finished on September 9th of 2021. So like very beginning of September, I started my backpacking hike by myself, and I was in the 100-mile wilderness for 6 days.
That's it?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. And I just remember a couple really significant things. One, there's this very well-studied phenomenon called the 3-day nature fix, where when you're in nature for 3 days, and it's specifically about nature. It's not just being off your device. It's being immersed in nature for 3 days without your device. Something happens to your brain where your frontal cortex, which is where all of our like taskmaster stuff happens, like dealing with, okay, what time do I have to be at work? I have to pick this thing up at the store. Okay, the kid needs to be here. The dog needs this. Like all of that, like day-to-day management that we do. When you're in the woods, you don't have to do any of that. And so after it takes 3 days for your brain to kind of register like, oh, okay, I don't have to do any of these things right now. All we're doing right now is like walking. And so that part of your brain sort of starts to quiet down. And then all these other parts of your brain start lighting up, particularly problem solving, innovation, and creativity. And they've studied it. There's a great blog post on REI's website that talks about this, the 3-day nature fix. And I truly, on day 4 of my hike, it was like a switch had flipped. Like I was hearing things differently. I was smelling things, noticing things, and I had so much space for creative thought. I was brainstorming books I wanted to write, and it was just really, really empowering and interesting. So that happened, and then I was also, alone in the woods for 6 days, and I just remember coming out onto the Golden Road and feeling like I just did that. I can do anything I set my mind to. And I really wanted to share that particularly with other women, but also with anyone who wanted to set a goal or needed creative space. And so that was what really prompted me to get my guide's license, because I knew if I wanted to guide people, I would have to have my license.
Absolutely. Yeah. In Maine, that is one of the most important things.
Yes.
If you get caught in a situation, you better have that license.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that's really interesting. I never heard of the 3-day fix, but it makes so much sense.
It does. Yeah.
Like
it's really cool.
World, especially here in Portland, right? I feel like the world is so chaotic. Mm-hmm. There's cars everywhere, and your brain just isn't working.
It never rests. Yeah.
It never rests.
And then you put yourself in front of a screen. So in the times when we should be resting, like in the evening or in the morning, and now we have these screens that are taking up all of our time and energy too. So it's a very unique and unfortunately uncommon thing for people to be really checked out for multiple days at a time.
Yeah. I think doom scrolling is a huge part of the brain never being able to rest.
Right.
Because the first thing you do in the morning is
pick
check
up your phone.
The first thing you do, or the last thing you do in the evening is check your phone.
Right.
It's just, your brain is constantly on overdrive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of the traditional authors, I'm very much thinking of Thoreau and Leopold particularly. Really, all the authors that kind of leaned into that transcendentalism really just understood it.
Right.
And understood that if you quiet your mind, you can really start to explore other things versus just being in do this mode.
Right. There's a book called, actually, the RAI blog is the 3-Day Nature Effect, but there's a book called The Nature Fix. That's you're gonna have to Google it. I'm terrible with remembering author names, but it's a woman who studied several places around the world. Japan and Korea are two that I'm remembering specifically, and there's another where they really build nature time into their culture and make a lot of space for it. And just like the science, the neuroscience is fascinating in the book. It's indisputable how important it is for us to be in nature.
Does it vary across cultures, or is it a universally recognized phenomenon?
It's universally recognized. I just think there are some cultures that do a better job than we do in the United States of emphasizing and prioritizing nature. I mean, we have great, obviously, natural spaces, but it's about there are some places around the world who just talk about it more and really encourage people to do like forest bathing and connecting with nature daily. So like going for a walk, and you could do this in Portland, right? Like go out on the Portland trails and leave your phone in the car. Like sort of intentional disconnecting and putting yourself in a beautiful outdoor space.
And there's plenty of them.
There are.
Baxter Woods. I mean, there's Back Cove.
Yeah.
You have, Evergreen Cemetery is a great birding spot.
Right.
If you're into that. And
right.
Even the promenades.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just anywhere that's green.
Yeah. Anywhere that's green.
Yeah, definitely. So you finished Katahdin as your 67th.
I did.
That's such a hardcore like cinematic end to it. I was just like, I did killing. No, it wasn't Killington.
Camel Sump.
Yeah, it was Mansfield.
Oh, Mansfield.
And then I was like, all right, let's do Camel Sump.
Right.
I'll just do Camel Sump, and that'll be good.
And that'll be it. Then I'm done.
I went to a local pub, grabbed a microbrew and went home.
Right.
I worked that night. But so afterwards, you decided to become a registered Maine guide. You decided to throw yourself at the hardest exam in the nation.
Yeah.
For this kind of thing. What was the testing process like? Did you feel a lot of pressure going into it, knowing that you wanted to base your life around this? Yeah,
it was a huge amount of pressure. I was so nervous. And I did. This is really what I wanted to do for a living. And so there's that pressure too. In my group with Maine Outdoor Learning Center, I think there were maybe 8 of us, 8 women. And people wanted to get their license for varying reasons. Some were, they wanted to volunteer. Some it was just, they just wanted the knowledge. There were not, I think I was the only one who was like, no, I'm starting a business. Like, this is what I'm doing.
Yep.
So yeah, it was a huge amount of pressure. And I think I made it pretty clear when I went into the exam room that that was my intention. And that was part strategic because I was hoping that by doing that, and I also had, you have to write down what your experience is. And so they could see that my experience was in hiking.
Yeah, you have to itemize the list.
Yes, exactly. Yep. How many years have you been doing this? And so my hope was that they would focus on more hiking related questions. I knew they were going to test me on everything, but it did actually work out that the scenarios that they gave me, sort of the big event scenarios, were more like hiking focused, relevant to what I said I was going to use the license for.
Huh. Well, that's a lucky break there.
Yeah. Doesn't always go that way, but
it does not.
They can ask you literally anything.
And they will.
And they will.
And I think one of the questions I got asked was, they really hit me hard with identification during my second go through. And I remember it was so funny because I kind of knew the game a little bit at that point. So they asked me, they said, how's your bird identification? And I said, well, I never got tested on it. And I'm a master at birds. So and they're like, yeah, let's test you on birds. I'm like,
yeah, let's do it.
Totally do that. But yeah, were your concurrent tests as stressful once you got that rec guide? Or were they just like,
Oh yeah, no, it was still terrible.
Yeah, anytime you're going to the room.
Yeah, it was rough.
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Have you ever had a client teach you something in the woods?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. I mean, I feel like I've had clients who, like you said, are big bird people or they're big plant people, and so I've learned a lot. Tori, again, who's the wilderness guru, she and I have like spent time together in the woods, and she knows every single plant, tree, and fungus, right? And so I think it's been cool to also guide with other guides. I've learned a lot from other guides. And I think what I learn most from my clients, sometimes facts and, cool experiences, is how to deal with different personality types, because everybody's coming with a different comfort level and physical ability. And so I've just learned a lot about people. Mm-hmm. I had no idea how much therapy I would be giving
oh my gosh.
in the woods.
That's a release for people. Like people,
it really
people
is.
Tend to just, I don't want to say crash out in the woods, but they tend to just have that emotional break.
They do. They do. And for me, I had spent a year hiking. Most of the 67 peaks I hiked alone. I did some with friends, but mostly I was by myself. So my experience in the woods had been a very quiet experience and very reflective. And so I just assumed that that's what everybody was like in the woods. And then I realized that is not the case. People like to chat and process their life stories, and that's okay. That's something that I've learned to, deal with, and I have had some really, really phenomenal experiences and made connections with people through that. So sometimes it's a great thing.
And then sometimes you got a difficult one.
And then sometimes at hour 15, you're like, can we just get back to the car? Yeah. Well, by hour 15, nobody is talking for sure. No, everybody is just like, let's just go. Yep. Yeah.
I swear, people are more quiet on the downhill than the uphill.
Yes, it's true. Yeah, it's true.
Oh man. So with She Hikes Mountains, so you started with the blog, and then you went into the actual guiding service.
Right.
Did you have momentum on the blog to the point where business just kind of picked up right
Yeah, I did. Because I also had the Instagram with the same name, and there's just a really, and Facebook too, but more Instagram. There's a very active hiking community on social media.
Oh yeah,
and
especially in the woods.
Active and supportive, and sometimes very opinionated. So I had already established kind of a presence and had followers. I was following people, kind of engaging with folks. I had people commenting on my website. So it was pretty easy. I basically just added a guide services page to my website and was kind of up and running. Yeah. And yeah, if you Google, Maine Guide or Guide for Katahdin, my page will come up. And so it's all been Google searching and word of mouth. I haven't had to do any marketing really beyond social media. Yeah.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned the whites hiking community, because there's two very separate, I'd say there's three actually. There's three very separate hiking cultures in the whites. Mm-hmm. You have the people who just want to go in and hike and look at the waterfalls, and then you got the ones who are like the peak taggers, and then you have the trail runners, the trail bros,
right?
The people who hike Mount Washington 6 times a week,
right.
Those folks, and it's just very interesting to see the convergence of all the people doing similar things, but in
different levels of intensity, and yeah.
I used to work at Think of Notch, so I'd run into
that's right
all of the archetypes there.
Right.
And I've run into the legendary guys. I've run into Jimmy Rips. I've run into Philip Karsha on Moosalok. I've run into he owns the coffee company there. He hiked Mount Washington 365 times.
Oh my gosh.
Once a day.
Oh my gosh, for a year.
For a year.
Yep.
Respect.
Yeah, that's big.
Couldn't be me. I understand you're also part of Maine Outdoor Brands, like you mentioned earlier. What was the application process for that like?
Oh, that's easy. Yeah, you just have to be an outdoor brand, basically.
Well, that's
Yeah,
not too difficult.
it's not too difficult. I mean, it's a professional organization, so there are like dues, but it's based on the size of your company, so very affordable for me as a one-person operation. There's an interview process. I mean, I don't know that they sort of take everyone, but you meet with the membership team and sort of say, here's what I do, here's why I want to get involved, and then that becomes a great community. And most people are there because we feel guiding, not just guiding, but working in the outdoor industry can be pretty siloed. So, meaning it's hard to find other people kind of doing the same thing. If there's no obvious like networking event or, here's how you meet people. And so Maine Outdoor Brands, I think, is a nice way to bring people together who aren't doing the same things, but have very much the same interests and motivations for, protecting what we have, the resources we have in Maine.
I could not agree more to everything you just said, which is why I was sitting with my eyes down at the floor wide, because as a guide, I would love to find a mentor. I'd love to find somebody who would just take me in, show me the ropes, and show me how to do the thing.
Right.
And it just doesn't.
It just doesn't happen. It's really tough. You have to because I did a little bit of that when I first got my license, and I knew I wanted to guide, but I wasn't sure how to start. It was like, well, do I just hang up my shingle and say I'm a hiking guide now? That felt a little bit scary.
Yeah.
And I was like, should I apprentice? Should I work for a summer with an outfitter? And it was really hard I talked to some guides who were kind of older and winding down who were willing to chat with me, but it was tough to find resources. And yeah, I could have gone and worked for an outfitter, doing moose tours, but there aren't a lot of what you would think of as a classic outfitter doing, long hiking trips.
Yeah.
It's more individual guides or small businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. So I understand you guide in places well away from Maine as well.
I do.
You have guided in Massachusetts, New Hampshire,
Vermont, Connecticut, the Smokies, the Shenandoah Valley, the Grand Canyon.
That's so hardcore.
Yeah.
And you're going international.
And yes, in September I'm guiding in Provence, France.
Whoa.
Yes.
What is it like getting an international visa to guide?
Oh, I haven't even tackled that yet.
Sure.
So the guiding I do that's not in New England is with a company called Adventures in Good Company. So they're a women's adventure travel business based out of Fort Collins, Colorado. It's an all-female office team, guide team, and all of our participants are female. So that's when I do things in the Smokies and Shenandoah and the national parks and the trip to France. I'm a contracted guide with Adventures in Good Company. So and it's amazing. It's such a great complement to the work I do independently, because as an independent guide here in Maine and New Hampshire, it's all on me, right? It's not, I'm dealing with all of the communication with the client, the logistics, the actual guiding, all of that. The liability, the insurance, all of it falls under my business. Yeah. As a contracted guide, there's an office staff who does all of that. So all I do is show up and guide, right?
Yeah,
so
right,
it's which is not entirely true. There's some getting in touch with our participants the week before and just making sure, it's a lot of work.
Like the duffel shuffle and making sure.
Yeah, making sure, what are your dietary restrictions? Because we do all the cooking on the trip. Yep, what are your mobility limitations? Because our real core demographic is women in their 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Sure.
So, but having that in complement to my Maine guide license has been fantastic, because I've gotten to guide, like you said, kind of all over the country, and now getting to do some international trips. And it allows me to work with a guide team. So on those trips, I always have a co-guide, which has been fantastic. I've learned so much, and I really enjoy the team experience of those trips. Totally. So, and Adventures in Good Company does have a trip in Maine in the 100-mile wilderness and up Katahdin. And so part of why I was hired by the company was because when they run that trip, they need a registered Maine guide on the team because you can't guide in Baxter without a license.
That's right.
Commercially. So they hired me to do that trip. And then I said, well, what else can I do?
And then you ended up in France?
And then I ended up in France.
Ventures a good company taking you to
Yes.
France?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Are you paying
Yes.
for airfare?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, it's part of the deal. Yeah. So I'll go over so when we do international trips, we partner with a local guide. So there'll be a woman who is a French native who obviously speaks the language, knows the area. And then I go as kind of a representative of the company and make sure that everybody's like having a good time and has kind of a contact from back home, which I think it's less of a big deal in Europe, but we do trips to, Southeast Asia, Japan, South America, Patagonia. So in some cases, it's more, it's a comfort thing for the women we travel with, just to know that somebody from the company is coming along and will be there to answer questions and be the kind of liaison. So
absolutely, I was just about to say the liaison back home.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and this is a very targeted question. Say you're a young guide fresh out of DIFW with a paper and a patch and do not know where to start. When it comes to all of this, where, in your opinion, is the best place to begin?
Well, I would say...
this is me, folks.
Yeah, and your name is Piers. I think reaching out to individual guides and just kind of putting yourself out there and saying just that. I just got my license. Here's what my experience is, right? And you do have relevant experience. And saying, this is what I've done. This is what I'm hoping to do. Do you need an extra hand? Like, do you have a trip that I could apprentice on? Because as we have said, there's no like centralized place where it's like, here are all the guides in the state of Maine. No you've got to Google. So I think that's a good place to start. I also did, that's how I ended up at LL Bean. Was I didn't have my sea kayak guide license yet. I had my rec guide license, and LL Bean does mostly water-based trips, but they do have some canoe trips in the Allagash. They have some biking. Once in a while, there's some hiking, not a ton, some birding. So I reached out to them and said, hey, can I have my rec license, and I was able to be an assistant paddleboard guide with just my rec license. There's some kind of fuzzy...
it's freshwater versus saltwater.
Yeah, and how close you are to shore. There's just some fuzzy stuff there. But I was able to do some guiding with them that first summer when I just had my rec license. And there are a few other outfitters like that. There's Mahoosuc Guide Services over near Grafton Notch. I know they have a lot of trips. They're very hardcore. I know they do like dog sledding. But yeah, so I think it's a combination of finding outfitters who may be willing to hire you in sort of an assistant position. Another great thing at LL Bean is they have kids camp. So a lot of young guides, actually a lot of young people before they are guides start at kids camp. So you get all this experience, you're around guides, and then you can kind of become like an apprentice for the summer. And that it helps you, because part of the thing that's so hard, as you know, about the test is it's like you have to have 2 years of experience in the area that you want to guide in. But how do you get that experience if you don't have your license?
It's such a
right. So things like that. Working at camps is really a great way to get experience. Or some of the bigger outfitters, like I said, will may be willing to take on an apprentice or kind of an assistant role. So
sure.
But it's tough. It's like you can't just hang up your shingle, because that's not.
That'll get you nowhere.
It'll get you nowhere. Yeah, and it'll be really stressful. So
definitely. It's funny you mentioned that. Have you heard of the Junior Maine guides?
I have heard of the Junior Maine. It's really cool, and they actually do have a study book.
Yep, and I've heard that their exam is more difficult than ours, which is
wow. I didn't know that.
Well, that's kind of what I heard through the grapevine. I briefly worked at Bryant Pond, the 40 camp for the University of Maine, and there was the JMG kids.
Yep,
and they like lived up in the like.
Oh yeah, they're legit.
They're legit.
Yeah,
no jokes. Like when we were down in the cabins with the kids and taking them on the canoe trips out onto the middle of the lake, the JMG kids are up in tarps.
Right.
They're not. They're just living.
They're
in the
hardcore.
Woods for a month.
Yeah.
They're living in the woods for a month, and they're like doing all this studying. They had to study like the 14 in Maine and then then some as well. Like I think one of them had to tell me where Elephant Mountain was. And I'm like, the one on Moose Lake McGunsett? Like that one?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. And yeah, they had that convention where they all come together and JMG, they have the testing.
Yeah.
Some of them pass and some of them don't.
Yeah.
And that's still not a professional certification.
Right.
Which is kind of crazy.
No.
Yeah.
Huge accomplishment, though.
Totally. Absolutely. So what worries you the most about the future of Maine's outdoor culture?
Oh, that's a good question. I actually think Maine's outdoor culture has a really bright future. I think there are people at the government level and at nonprofit level who are really working hard to protect our outdoor spaces. And I hope that it's always the focus of our economy or a big part of it. Because I think the other thing that's important to me about guiding is when I guide, my intention is to not, of course, my first intention is safety, but beyond that, it's creating stewardship, right? So I want people to not only have these great experiences in the wilderness, but for those experiences to then become non-negotiable for them, which is what happened for me.
Absolutely.
It was once I knew what it felt like to be outside and immersed, it became something that had to be part of my life. And so, of course, when I go vote, I'm voting in a way that supports the economy and conservation and is cognizant of climate change and all these things. So I want to pass that on as well. Not only bravo, you set a goal, you got to the top of Katahdin, but in order for people to keep experiencing the outdoors, we have to protect the outdoors. And I think the best way to do that is to make the outdoors indispensable to more people.
Yeah.
And so then that fire is inside you to be no, we're not selling that land, or no, we're not, building that pipeline or whatever it is. And then
that data center.
Yeah, I know. And then to take that feeling and that passion to the polls with you.
Yeah. And then that's where real change can happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think so many people are insulated from the outdoors that they don't have that in mind.
Exactly.
And your goal is to change that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I guess the follow-up question is, what gives you hope about the future of Maine's outdoor economy?
I think there are so many really smart, really passionate people working in favor of Maine's outdoor economy. And that gives me hope, just that people are aware of it and getting involved and engaging. That makes me hopeful. And I think it's a fine line. Sometimes I see pictures of the White Mountains and the lines of people, going up the really popular trails. And, that's happening on Everest and these places that become overrun with tourism. And I think in Maine, we are really protective of our state and our spaces. And it's kind of similar to the Maine Guide thing, right? We are, it's a kind of a protected, storied profession. And you can feel that protectiveness, especially as you move further north into the state and into some of our bigger areas of land. I think people really feel protective and passionate about it.
Yeah.
And so it's finding that balance of, okay, how do we utilize these resources to make money for the state, because we need that.
Maine does not have a lot.
No. But how can we create opportunity for additional dollars coming into the state without sacrificing the health of our outdoor spaces? And I feel hopeful about that because I do think there are a lot of, again, really smart, talented, passionate people working toward that mission at the state level, at nonprofit level, at, Maine Outdoor Brands, organizations like that. And at the guide level, our responsibility We're kind of, in some ways, like the gatekeepers to some of these places. I mean, obviously, anyone can go hike Katahdin if they want to, but that may not be the best choice. And so we have a role to play in that and kind of helping people understand the challenges of the state and, keep them safe and also law abiding. Sometimes people don't understand, particularly with Baxter, like.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Do you remember the incident? The incident?
Yes, of course.
Yep. That kind of completely and totally changed Baxter's opinion of through hiking and speedrunning forever.
Right.
That incident, yeah, that's real world stuff.
Right.
It can be something as simple as a kid taking off their life vest while in the middle of Moosehead, right? That's a violation too.
Right.
Or it can be somebody spraying champagne on the top of Katahdin, which attracted not brown bears.
Thank God, not brown bears.
Thank God they did not come
Black
away
bears.
from California. Black bears, and then bees, and bees built the hive, and there was real world consequences.
Yeah, there were.
And that's why the party limit exists.
Right.
I believe. Right.
I think it may have existed before that. I'm not sure. We'd have to Google that. But I also think, unfortunately, that incident, the runner was not responsible for gathering that group of people.
Yes.
And so, it's it's a tough one because Katahdin is the northern terminus of the AT, and it's a place where when people set these big records and goals, obviously, like Katahdin is part of that. And so, I know. It's something that I think that Baxter will grapple with for some time. Although I also know that through hiking is down right now. It does go. There are trends. It goes in waves. It's section hiking is really up right now. Flip-flopping is really big right now. And so I think, and if you look at it historically, if you look at the numbers of people who hike the AT, it does kind of go up and down. And hopefully COVID boom for sure, but I think we're coming out of that. So it may be one of these things that becomes a non-issue until it becomes an issue again.
Yeah, right. Until something else happens that drives a lot of people to hike 2,100 and what is it, 95 miles?
It changes every year because every year they have to do a little detour around something. But about 2,200 miles. Yeah,
2,200. Yeah, so that's a very interesting part of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's no secret that some Maine guides, there's a group of Maine guides, a very large group of Maine guides that are members of the good old boys. And you absolutely shattered that mold when you came onto the scene.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of women have come before me and broken that mold. I mean, there are some phenomenal hunting and fishing guides who are female who've really made a place for themselves. But I think that the rec guide community has a lot of really strong women figures. And I've actually had male clients say to me that they specifically sought out a female guide. In part because I think there's this idea that we're more patient as women. And, I don't know, I've worked with many male Maine guides who are super patient. So I don't know. I think that's kind of a stereotype. But most of the rec guides I know who are actively working as hiking guides are women. And so I think there is kind of this difference between the hunting and fishing segment, which does seem to be an older white man dominated, segment of guiding. Mm-hmm. But then hiking guides and also sea kayaking guides, where there are as many women guiding that I encounter as there are men. So I think it's a little more specific to the license.
Sure. Yeah, I probably agree with that.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of the examiners are also members of it.
Yes.
Yeah, examiners are definitely...
And that's tough too because I think there's only one female examiner.
What?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
never got
may have been two, but there's one that I know of, and she is probably the most qualified guide I've ever known, and actively guiding. And I think some of the examiners are probably retired,
Sure.
and so have a huge amount of experience and knowledge, but potentially not in the area that they're testing in, which I think can be tough too. There aren't specific guides like necessarily, like they don't have a group of like sea kayaking testers. There are people who test who know a lot about sea kayaking, but scheduling wise, it's not like they do all of the sea kayakers on one day.
You could get a hunting guide. Who
Exactly.
administer the sea kayak.
Right. Exactly. And so they're following along, and of course there's overlap, right? With emergency situations, there's common ground there, but identifying the parts of a kayak, or like how you do a kayak rescue, maybe is not something that a hunting guide
might know as well.
Would know, right?
Win mag versus 30-06.
Right. So I do think there's some progress to be made in the pool of testers that they have.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's any younger guides that are part of the testing cadre, or do you think that it's mostly?
I don't know. I mean, the woman I know who tests is probably in her late 30s, so she's pretty young.
Good.
During my sea kayaking test, I know there are some young game wardens who are testing. I had one of those on my sea kayaking test, but I don't know. I mean, it's all, again, it's kind of this word of mouth. Like, it's not like they publish. Well, maybe they do, but I've never seen a published list of who all the examiners are. So
No.
I think
I don't even know how you become an examiner.
I don't either.
Like, it's like they just kind of are there and they're like, hey, you want to be an examiner? Yep, sure do. And that's who you get.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be great if they had more women and more people who, more kayak people. Honestly, when I got my kayaking license, it was more to do paddle boarding, and nobody knows anything about paddle boarding. It just kind of falls under sea kayaking.
Yeah.
But it's a very different sport. So
absolutely. Yeah. And you have to follow like boat laws when it comes to
you do,
paddleboard.
you do, because you're out in the ocean as a vessel.
As a vessel, you have to have everything that a boat vessel would have.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very interesting place for it to be.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, did you ever have a situation where a client underestimated your abilities as a guide?
Yes. I did have a very challenging situation on Katahdin where someone was injured, and the injured person was lovely. But there was another person in the group who, it's always the other person, who had a lot of opinions about how the situation was being handled, which was very challenging. And again, because it was Baxter, I didn't have a lot of resources available to me.
Was it just you?
No, it was I had a co-guide.
Okay, good.
So it was, Baxter's motto is essentially self-rescue unless you're dying or can't move, like if you've broken a femur, or you're having a heart attack or something.
Yep.
So, and it's not just Baxter, self-rescue is always the best rescue, because when you call for rescue, you're now putting other people at risk.
Oh, yeah,
and
I have a funny story about that I'll follow back to.
So like, obviously there are really good reasons to call for rescue. But there's also that decision. And I think part of guiding is decision-making and being able to make decisions under pressure, because that's the other thing that this particular incident really taught me is like, we prepare for all these things. I have a WOOFer, which is a wilderness first responder certification, which is like a 5-day, really intense. You do all these scenarios. It's terrible.
The mass casualties.
It's like, it's rough. And so you do all these things and you do your best to prepare. And then you're in a real life emergency. And the level of stress and trying to make decisions under stress, it's just really impossible to create that unless you're in like a scenario, right? Like you have to be in the situation to understand how you'll respond mentally and physically. Like your adrenaline is running and you're questioning everything. And it's just, you can't really prepare for it. You can only learn from what you did. And, hopefully you did everything that you could possibly do, but you really can't prepare for stuff like that. You can have your toolkit and your resources, and you can try to remember, like, okay, these are the steps for assessing the patient and whatever. But, you just don't know what the emergency is going to feel like until you're in it, and you never know how other people are going to react. And I think that's the part that's also really hard to prepare for. Like this, the injured person was totally willing to be helped and to engage in self-rescue. It was someone else in the group who was absolutely belligerent about why someone wasn't coming to rescue us.
That's very interesting. And I think that that's more of an expression of anxiety.
It was absolutely. It was an emotional stress response to what was happening, but it was like both things were equally demanding, right?
Yeah.
The woman who had actually like hurt herself and this woman who was causing so much stress for everyone around.
And then you have to manage the other clients.
And then
too.
the other clients as well. Yeah. So yeah, it's when stuff like that happens, it really tests your ability to stay calm, manage people, manage your own anxiety. So yeah.
Absolutely. So I think a great spot to kind of cap this off, bring it back to the Portland level.
Mm-hmm.
You live in Portland.
I do.
You guide all over the state of Maine, but you live in the biggest city. So how do you stay connected to nature as somebody who lives in Portland's biggest city?
Great question. Well, I definitely utilize Portland trails. I love the behind the cemetery, Evergreen Cemetery, those trails, and the trails along the river. So in the winter, I go cross-country skiing at Riverside. I think that Portland has a lot of really great outdoor opportunities. And I mean, how often do you get to like live in a city where you can hop in your car and drive 5 minutes and like actually find a parking spot at a beach?
Right.
You know, like that's not, I feel like we are so lucky and it's such a unique city. And it is a city, but it's also, we have so many nature opportunities around us that are free and easy to access. So I get outside as much as I can in Portland, and then I just make it a priority to get out of the city, ideally once a week, to go do, even if it's, like I said, I think Pleasant Mountain is an underrated, phenomenal hike. It's one of my favorites. It's only an hour from Portland, give or take, depending on where you're starting. There are like 5 different trail options that all have kind of unique features. It's a great training hike if you're like gearing up for hiking season. Nice. So I think being intentional about getting out of the city, if hiking and really being, spending a couple hours, right, like totally disconnected is important to you, building that into your routine. And then I think just getting outside a daily practice, even if it's just for like 15 minutes to, and if you're in downtown Portland, we have parks, and yes, you can still see the cars and hear all the noises, but, take off your shoes and socks and get grounded in the grass, and that can be really healing.
Absolutely. I agree with that. That's a really good way to say it. So I like to end my podcast with a bit of a funny question that I come up with for each person. And the one I thought of on the fly, Rod Crosby. That was bad. Wow. I'm going to give you 6 animals that we have in the state of Maine.
Okay.
And you're going to have to choose 3 that you would want to go to a tea party with.
Okay.
And 3 that you'd want to get into a boxing ring with.
Okay.
Do you box?
No. I mean, I've done some like kickboxing for exercise.
Cool. All right. So this is a wild one. All right. The moose, obviously. The black bear. The bobcat.
Okay.
The coyote. The pine marten. And let me think of a good final one. We're in Portland. The harbor seal.
The harbor seal. Okay, well, the harbor seal would definitely go in the boxing ring because it would just flop around. And let's see. The bear could go in the boxing ring during the winter because it would sleep.
Yes, they'd be hibernating. Yep.
And then I think the moose would definitely be at the tea party.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Do not want to box with one of them.
Nope.
I feel like they're more deadly than black bears.
Make you go on a whole tangent about that. Yeah. Moose are scary.
Moose are very scary. Let's see. The bobcat.
You sure you want to? I would go to the tea party with a bobcat.
I think the bobcat would go to the tea party. They're pretty scary too.
Yeah.
What was the other one? The pine marten and
pine marten and coyote.
I'd probably have the coyote also go to the tea party, the most dangerous animals. And then the pine marten, I don't know. I feel like pine martens just kind of hang out and munch on leaves.
Kind of. But then I've also seen videos, and working in the whites, I saw a video of, we had a pine marten at Galehead.
Yeah.
You know Galehead?
Yeah.
Named Socks. And Socks would come in and like steal the food off the counter.
Oh my gosh.
So there's like video, my former Hutmaster Cooper, has a video of like him filming a pine marten, just like grabbing a thing of flour, just walking out.
Oh
I don't know if
my
it was
gosh.
flour, but it was definitely food off the Galehead counters. So pine martens have a little bit of tenacity to them.
Yeah.
They are part of the Maltese family, with like fishers and wolverines.
Which can be very mean.
Yeah. But it's still, coyote's also pretty.
Yeah, coyotes are kind of scary too.
It's also really important, as I say this, that it's important to note that we are not going out and punching any wildlife. Rule number 6 of Leave No Trace is respect wildlife. And at Between the Piers, we definitely respect wildlife. Do not go out and do any boxing matches with moose especially. Please and thank you. Sarah, thank you so much. It has been great having you on this. We've talked about demystifying the Registered Maine Guide. We've talked about Hikes Mountains. And we've talked about
tea parties with moose.
Tea parties with moose.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
In France. Good luck.
Thanks.
Where's your next guiding trip?
My next guiding trip is in the Whites.
In the Whites?
So yeah, I'll be there at the end of the month doing a hut-to-hut on the Presidential Traverse.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, very good. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. Catch you next time on Between the Piers. This is episode 9. We are getting real close to the 10-episode goal. Episode 10's coming up soon. So long, everybody. And as always, stay weird, Portland.